Okay, in our last video we were building a chat application, the client-side version of that, so we're really only chatting with ourselves because we don't have any server-side or back-end piece to connect individuals to each other. This is just the front-end side, how one client would be using a web page to chat. Okay, and we left off in this send message function. Okay, so the send message function is attached to our send button. Anytime we click the send button, our send message is going to get the chat view, which is this element, right? And we have to get the text box, the text area, right? And we call that the message box, right? And we want to have some new message. So that new message is going to be what's in this text area, message box dot value, right? So to access the contents of a control, generally, there are some exceptions, but generally use dot value. So the change we made was previously we were just replacing the content here with whatever was in the text box. What we want to do is add to it. So we create this variable chats. This gives us the existing chats. We have chat view element.innerHTML, gives us the existing chats, and then we add to chats our new message, right? And then chat view.innerHTML, this is our chat view, we're going to set that to that chats variable, which is going to include our new message. So it should have all the old messages and our new message. So that's the idea. So let's test this out. Hello, how are you? Send. Okay, so one problem we see right away is normally in a chat program that gets cleared out as soon as you send the message, right? You don't have to manually delete it. So we're going to need to fix that. I am fine. Right, and I press send. Okay, so a couple issues here, right? We see that even though we have might have a new line character here, see in this text box, let's add some new line characters and send that. In HTML, new line characters are not rendered. You do not see them show up in the rendered version of the HTML, right? In this HTML, there's a new line character here, a new line character here. None of those show up. If you actually want a new line to show up in your HTML, in the rendered view, you have to use the BR tag, right? So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to process this new message and replace any new line characters with a BR tag, okay? So what we need to do here probably is well, the first thing we want to do is we'll solve this problem. When you click send, we'll clear that because that one's easy to solve. Alright, so after we do all this stuff, we have this message box element, and all we need to do really is after we get the message from the message box, we can say message box element dot value and just set it equal to the empty string. So that should clear that problem up. And send, and it goes away. Now another thing that we might want to do is I click send, and if I try to type again, I can't. Normally in chat programs, you can type and press send, and then this control still has what's called focus. So when I click off of it, you see it's not highlighted, and when I type, nothing can go into it, right? That's called focus. When it's blue, this control has focus. So when you're editing the fields of a form, one field at a time has the focus. So what we want to do after we send to, after we send, we want to go ahead and make this text area have focus. Okay, so we can do that as well. We can say message box element, and you do that simply by saying dot focus. All right, so we can change that, and see we have every time we click, it gets focus again. All right, now this hasn't fixed this problem yet. All right, keep trying to save the page like that. All right, so let's try to figure out how we're going to clean this up. We need to basically replace any of the new line characters we get from this new message with a BR tag. Okay, because if I log this out, console.log new message, we're going to see there is a new line character. let's log out the length. So A1. Oh, apparently there is no new line associated. Okay, well that's good. That's why we test things out, right? So we have new message, and when you send this new message, right? But there might be new lines in it if we do something like this. Right, so we do need to be aware that there could possibly be new line characters, right? So there's 3 A's there, and there'd be new line characters in between. So we still do need to check for the new line characters, but we also need to just add one new line character at the end of our new message, right? Because there should always be at least one new line character. So our new message is going to be the contents of the message box, and then we're going to just add one new line character. All right. So then what we have to do is set new message equal to some cleaned up version of the message. So we need to pass up pass new message into a function that will clean up the new line characters. Okay, so we can call this clean up message. There we go. And we're going to pass in the message that we want to clean up, which is new message. Okay, so we're passing in new message, which has new lines in it, and we hope that this function will remove all those new lines and replace them with BR tags and return that result. And we're going to store that new result into new message. All right, so let's make this function here. Okay, so function new message, and oh, I'm sorry, that's cleanup message. Right, and so the expectation is that there is a message here. So cleanup message here. These names should match, right? And we have a parameter message in this function, and here we're passing in the argument new message. So whatever we pass into this function call as the argument, that gets stored in the parameter in our function definition. Right? So cleanup message, we're going to have to use the index of function. Well, there's many ways to do it, but we're gonna use the index of function that allows us to search for a particular character in a string. So let, and this is going to be the found index. So this is going to be the index of the location of the character we're searching for. Okay, so we're searching in the string message. This is a string value, and we're looking for an index. So the index of what? Well, we're looking for the index of a character \n. Okay, so what this function will do is if one of these characters exists in this string, it will return the index of that. So if it's the first character, this will be 0. If it's the second character, it'll be 1, right, etc., all the way through. Now if it goes through the entire string and does not find 1, then this value is -1. Okay, so that's going to be the condition in our while loop. So basically we need to search for all of these new line characters, not just one of them. So we're going to have some sort of looping involved. So we need a while loop, and we will say while found index does not equal -1. Okay, because if it does equal -1, then there's no more new line characters to find. As soon as it equals -1, we know there's no more new line characters, right? So if it doesn't equal new line -1, what we want to do is say message equals and msg.replace that new line character with a BR tag. All right. So in JavaScript, replace The replace function on a string only replaces one instance, whereas in other languages like Python, for example, it replaces all of them. So we need to have this loop here in JavaScript, where in Python we could just do something like this once and it would replace all the instances. So we don't have that functionality in JavaScript. So there are alternative ways of doing this, but this shows you some looping and some of the more basic concepts that we're used to. Okay, so I replaced that first instance of my newline character that I found with a BR tag. Okay, so the index where this newline character is now has that character, and then there's 4 more characters afterwards that are added to the string. Okay, so now the index of function takes an additional argument. So we need to search for another instance of a newline character, right? And technically, since we know no more newline characters exist, we could just we don't have to start searching from where we left off. We could start from the beginning again, but that's not particularly efficient. So what we probably want to do is say found index, and we have to change found index because it's part of our while condition. If we don't, this loop would run infinitely. Okay, so if you see your browser hang up, which I'll show you real quick, we'll do that. Reload this. We see the browser's hung up. We see my processor is going to 100%. It's because that while loop is just running over and over and over again. All right. So let me close that. Open it back up. There we go. All right. So if you see that happen where it's just non-responsive, and if you have a way of telling how much processor is being used, that usually means you're in an infinite loop. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make sure we have a condition that changes here. So this condition must eventually be false. So we have to change found index, otherwise this will never be false. So what we can do here is we can look at we can call message.index again, right? So we need to change found index and set that equal to message.index of. Now we should be able to just search for another new line because the one that was there doesn't exist, right? But we can also give it a starting place so it doesn't have to search all the characters again. Okay, so the second argument you pass to index of can be an index where you want to start searching. Okay, and that can save you computer cycles. That can save you some can gain you some efficiency, right? So what we want to start at, the place where we want to start, is the last place we found a newline character, and that would be this character, because the newline, when it's one single character, gets replaced by these 5 characters, right? So technically we could even go so far as to say plus we want to start the search after these. So start the search at this, it would be the found index. We would want 1 more than that, 2 more than that, 3 more than that, 4 more than that, and 5. We'd want to start there. So plus, the length basically of the BR tag. Right, something like that. So that's where we want to start the search. So this saves us a few cycles. All right, so found index plus 5. So this is going to keep finding new lines and then replacing them. So if we find another new line, does found index not equal -1? If it doesn't equal -1, that means there is one there. So we replace. Then we search again. Do we find one? If we don't find one, this becomes false and we break out of the loop. Right? And so then we just return our message. So let's reload and see. And then we'll test it again using the multi-line and see if this works. Okay, so that's good. So that is working correctly. All right, one other thing you'll see in chat programs though is if I press the enter key, it will send the message. But if I actually want a new line character in my message, I will hit shift enter to go to the next line. Shift enter. Right? But if I just press enter in most chat programs, that sends the message. Okay, so we can add that functionality in too. All right, what we have to do there though is on the text area, we need to detect when they press enter if the shift key is being pressed. And if it's not, if the shift key is not being pressed, we send the message, right? So let's do that. We're going to add a function here called detect enter. Okay, and we're going to call this function on our text area. Okay, so the text area is our message box. On key press, so anytime we press a key, we are going to try to detect enter. And I need to put that in quotes. Detect enter. All right. So anytime I press a key, what I want to do is I want to check to see if the key being pressed is the enter key. All right. So now we can look at some websites about detecting keyboard key codes. Okay. So the key code is the numeric value associated with a particular key. All right. So if you just search on the internet for key code JavaScript, you might stumble across this one. This is one of the first views, or the first results. But you can look through here and understand the difference between a character code and a key code. In a key code, there's only one key for the A key, right? Character codes, there's two versions of the letter A. There's the capital letter A and the lowercase letter A, right? For our purposes, though, enter does not have two different values, so that's not as important. But you can read through this and learn more about key codes. And it's really important as you go and as you progress through JavaScript and you learn about new functionality that you go to some tutorial site or some informative site and learn thoroughly about that property or that event or that thing that you're using, right? So here's one good view, one good website. And then this website I found, key code info. This is really nice. Whatever key you press, it will tell you what the key is. So I pressed the letter A, which is the 65, the letter S, 83, right? And if I press the character or the keyboard key enter, we see that the key code is 13. All right, so that's the key code that I'm looking for. Event.key is actually a more convenient property. It gives you the string value of the key that you pressed. But it's not supported in all browsers. It's almost all browsers, so you can play around with that, but there's some mobile browsers and stuff that's not quite supported in yet. So this is much nicer, but right now we still have to kind of use this old style of key code. So what we want to do is we want to check to see, we want to first get our event, and we know that events are processed one at a time in JavaScript, right? We know JavaScript is single-threaded, and it will just process events one at a time. So if I'm in the middle of an event, like a key press event, I can access that event. I can call it EV. I can access that by window.event. So if there's an event happening, it's attached to this global window object and the .event property on it. Okay, so EV is the event that we have now. And I want to check to see if ev.keycode equals 13. If it equals 13, like we just saw, that's the enter key. Right? But I also want to check to see if the shift key is being pressed. So if the key code is 13 and we are not pressing ev.shift, okay, so this property on a key press event, ev.shift key is true if the shift key is being pressed. It is false if it's not. Okay, so if the key being pressed is enter and the shift key is not being pressed, that's when we want to send our message, right? Right? Otherwise, we just want to do the normal thing, and that would just add, let's find our, there it is. It would just add a new line, right? So that's what the normal behavior is. So the special behavior we want is if no shift key is being pressed, then we send the message. But if the shift key is being pressed, we just do the normal thing. All right, so detect enter. That's what we did there. Let's reload the page, and let's see. I can type something, hi, enter. Now here's one interesting issue. It added a new line into the text box. And that's because that's the default behavior of a text box. When you press the enter key, by default, that means add a new line character. We sent the message, but then that event also did the default behavior, which is to add a new line. Okay, what we want to do is prevent that default behavior so we don't have a new line. And I'll show you that again. I backspace, there's nothing in here. Control A, delete, there's nothing in this text area. And I say cat and press enter, and you see, right, it added that new line and then started the focus here. Right, so we want to remove that. That is preventing the default behavior. Okay, and to do that, we say EV on the event, and we want to just prevent the default behavior. All right. Now I can hit Shift Enter and then hit Enter. So this is starting to look like an actual chat. One other thing we need to look at is in chats, as you add items, the scroll bar is always at the bottom of the chat. All right, so we're going to add one final little thing here to kind of tweak that up. We go to our code, and that's going to be in the send message. So basically our chat view element. What we want to do is we want to modify where this chat view element is, where its scroll bar is located. Okay, and we can do that to say, let's see, chat view element, and then the scroll top. We're going to set that equal to the scroll height, which is, so scroll top, I believe, is the top of the view in which you want to scroll to, right? So how far down are we scrolling? Scroll top. Yeah, this gets a little complicated because there is, when you think about this, what's happening, there is the view, which is limited to this box, and then there's the contents, and then the scroll view scrolls somewhere in between the view of the maximum size of the content and above, right? So where you're scrolling is the difference between basically here and here, right? It's not the difference between the entire thing, right? So scroll top is where the top of your scrolling is showing up, right? So that the top portion of what I'm scrolling, scroll top, right? Where do I want that to be located? Okay, so when I go back to my code, scroll top, I want that to be located the entire scroll height. So this is the entire scroll height. So that's the chat view element. All right, and let's just start there and play with that and see what that looks like. Enough chats to get it to scroll. Okay, and if we scroll up and we add another message, okay, so you see that gets us far enough in the scroll. As we type, every time we type, it goes down. All right, and you can play around with that. It does get a little bit complicated because you have to think of a few different mathematical windows, right? There's a top and a bottom, and then there's amount that top could possibly change versus the height of the entire thing. So there are a few other properties involved in scrolling that can sometimes get a little bit tedious. But again, as you learn new properties, you might want to look them up. So you can go to W3 Schools and look up scroll height but I just wanted to toss that in there because that gives us our chat style functionality. Okay, and so that's the basics to getting a nice simple chat program going. We've got nice flow. We can modify this a little bit. It's a fluid layout. We have all the primary components. We can refresh the page, and here's the final chat. Great, and then Shift Enter. Right? So that's kind of a chat program, and in the next video we're going to add the idea of emojis. So what I want to do is, if I type something and say, here's my dog, okay, anything in the colons, that's going to be replaced with an image tag, and that image tag is going to be a tag of a small dog. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in the next one, but we first have to have a basic chat for that.